What do they need? What do they want? How best do they receive information? And then whatever I'm going to do, I should adapt myself so that I'm channeling towards their needs. Otherwise, it's hard to justify taking stage time and people's precious time.
Folks, I'm back with another episode of the Interview with Chiluveru, where we showcase amazing people with great ideas and good deeds. A few years back, I was asked to get up and speak for a few minutes. They gave me a topic. You know what? I started trembling and my hands were literally shaking and my feet were, I was nervous, completely nervous, but I did okay. Well, for most of us, public speaking is a major problem. We don't really do well when we're asked to speak in front of public. Even if you prepare, once you prepare, get up to the podium and then you're lost. You don't remember, you're not able to actually put them together and do it very well. So today I brought Chapman, an expert in public speaking. He's a Toastmaster and he was an accredited speaker by Toastmasters International. He's in our studios to speak to us and then give us some tips as to how we can improve this public speaking ability. Ron, as you know, one of the biggest fears of most humans in this world is getting up and speaking in front of a group or in front of a public. So my question will be, is there any quick checklist for my audience, for my viewers, as to, okay, do this, and your confidence level goes up? Can you just, let's get started with that.
Sure, a couple things. Number one, we've learned that if you can get the first few pieces right, stuff will follow better. So we coach people often to really work on their beginning, get it right, get it solid, because then you'll sort of find the rhythm. Another thing you can do is to actually practice your vocals a little bit before, just so your vocal cords are loosened and so forth, so you hit the ground again, effective and running. And there's never any harm in being well practiced in terms of where you're going. Lots of people will use notes. If you have to, that's going to have to be fine. But in fact, what we've learned oftentimes is if you can just remember the center line of what you're going to say, just the essentials. Most of us are conversational. We know how to tell a story. Try to get away from your notes and just learn to talk. One interesting tip with that is use stories, anecdotes, etc., because we rarely will forget a story. Some of the easiest things there. The one that's perhaps the most important is to practice your close as much as you practice your intro. Because commonly, most of us, we don't do the close as well as we need to, and that's really where we drive the point home.
I often read this and hear this. When it comes to stage performances, public speaking, interviews, they always say, you be true to yourself, be yourself. That means we have to be natural, right? But that doesn't happen when you get up and then go and start performing or speaking. All sorts of different things come into your mind and, intimidation, fear. So how to bring down that fear or intimidation, a feeling that public is going to judge you. Why do we get that, and how to really calm yourself down? Are there any tips for that too?
Sure. A couple things here. This is a really great question. The first one is, don't forget to breathe. The breath settles us. One of the last things you should do before you get started is find a quiet spot, a couple of deep breaths. The breath is inherently settling, and even if you get a little disturbed in front of people, if you take a brief pause and just take a good breath, which audiences will consider to be completely normal, it will very much settle you. There's an interesting conflict in this idea of being yourself. And the conflict is between the basic rudiments of good speaking versus your style. We need to learn the rudiments. We need to learn the ways that things work best. Toastmasters is a good place to learn that, a good speaking book, any number of things. Eventually, though, the place we want to get to, Viju, is we want to get to the place where you've learned the basics well enough that you can just do those second nature, which allows you to just be yourself. If you don't get the basics right, you're probably going to have a hard time expressing yourself well, even if you have a good style.
Which is a better thing? Speak anything that is given to you, or the occasion needs, or speak only about the subject or subjects that you're expert. For example, let's say I love nature. So should I keep on speaking about nature all the time and stay away from other subjects? How does it work?
Well, there's two ways you can go on this. One is many speakers are what we would call subject matter experts. There's a particular thing, that's all they talk about, all their audiences expect that of them, and that's fine. There's a different kind of speaker, which is one that is much more attuned to the needs of an audience. And it's a greater challenge. But the ability to take whatever material you're good at and adapt it to audience needs, which actually sets up what I think is the more important issue, not should I be a subject matter expert or not, but how do I make sure and fine tune whatever it is I'm going to do so that I'm hitting the audience's needs. Commonly, Viju, what happens is we talk about what we want to talk about, which is not in service to the audience. Our first question should be, what do they need? What do they want? How best do they receive information? And then whatever I'm going to do, I should adapt myself so that I'm channeling towards their needs. Otherwise, it's hard to justify taking stage time and people's precious time.
Okay. At what point do you consider the audience? Like, are they really receiving what you're speaking? Are they happy about your speech? So there are certain considerations, I'm sure, when you're speaking.
Sure.
You cannot go on and on. If you're given about 15 minutes of time,
Right.
you're not going to look at the audience reception or how they really liked or not after 15 minutes. You just have to pause and do a little bit of introspection or fact check, maybe within 1 or 2 minutes. Isn't that right? So how do you do that? How do you do that? Is there any formal way of doing it?
Well, the absolute minimum is you should be paying attention to their affect. Are they engaged? Have they taken phones out that they're looking at? Are they distracted? Are they not responding to, the places where they should be laughing or cocking their head? All those things we need to pay attention to, which for the initial speaker, the beginner speaker, is hard because we're kind of self-absorbed. But yes, learning to pay attention. Now, my personal preference is I have an interactive style. So in other words, I don't generally just speak at people. I mostly interact with people. And so the cueing for me, for two reasons, is for me to be actually doing things that cause the audience to engage with me. Number one, it's my style. Number two, they can't get distracted if I'm bringing them in.
Right.
But in order to do that, I have to stop thinking that my role is simply to talk at people. But stylistically, for me, that's very true to form.
When you're making the speech interactive, more interactive, I think there's a danger. Some people who do not want to be engaged, they withdraw from that.
Well, I have a couple of ways of thinking about this. Oftentimes, if I can ask a question well enough, a really well-constructed question, a real effective engagement strategy. I'll give you a couple of examples here in just a moment. I should be able to get the people who want to participate without having to singling them out. But that's on me to get really good at the questions. I rarely will ask, what do you think? Or who has a question? I will get very specific towards the things that I'm pretty sure will be engaging. And then better still, in my best of all worlds, Viju, I am out in the audience. I am not up on some platform above them. Because just the act of, it's the same reason that you and I are relatively close. If we were sitting across the room, our likelihood of interaction is much diminished just because of proximity. So if I have a perfect setup, I'm actually out in the middle of the group, floor level, side by side, and in some cases I'll even come down to their level because I want to get them in the conversation, else I'm not sure I'm doing a service to my audience.
Hey Ron, let's move to our second segment.
Okay.
In this segment, I would like to talk about Toastmasters International.
Okay.
In 2005, you were awarded the Accredited Speaker of Toastmasters International,
Right.
which
Yes.
is a great thing. I think you were, I think, one of the 75 Toastmasters.
75 in more than 35 years. Not very many of us.
Out of 7 billion people. That's a great feeling. That's a great feeling.
It is.
Okay. So my question is, how did this journey happen? Like, you started somewhere and you reached that phase. Explain to me in different milestones.
Sure. Well, I came to Toastmasters, which is where I've learned much of this, knowing that I wanted to speak and wanted to speak in a wide variety of ways. I got outstanding advice the first time I spoke at a Toastmasters club. A guy who was my evaluator, the person giving me coaching, said, Ron, listen, you're a pretty good speaker. If you really stretch yourself, you can get so much out of this. And I took it to heart, Viju, and I have been stretching myself ever since, simply for the sheer joy of seeing what one can do. The nice thing about the program that Toastmasters offers, and the world itself, because we need speakers, lots and lots of opportunities to extend one's skills, one's range, one's interests, if you're willing to go down that path. And then probably the magic elixir in all of this is I have actively sought feedback over and over again. Most of us are a little shy about actually hearing what people think. Mm-hmm. But if you don't get feedback, I mean, you can't improve. So I've been really good at soliciting feedback to help me get better.
I was browsing the website ronchapman.com, mm-hmm. and I see that you have so many decorations and titles and awards and all that stuff. So what's more interesting is you are a radio commentator too.
I had a long run on radio, yes.
That I think perhaps perfected you. I think that,
yes.
that particular job. So coming to your public speaking expertise, I think that's what you do currently. You do that for a living.
Yes.
So in these engagements that you take up, in these gigs, how do they pick you? Why should they pick Ron Chapman? Why not a Viju? Mm-hmm. So tell me, what's your USP, unique selling proposition?
Well, I'm going to preface this with a comment before I talk to you about my unique, market niche. What I learned was that the greatest thing we can do to establish ourselves is always substantially over-deliver. It is remarkable when you bring the A+, when you bring it, this is true everywhere, not just speaking. Mm-hmm. When you over-deliver, when you give people everything you got, they tell other people about you. I haven't marketed myself in years. Mm-hmm. It's all word-of-mouth reference. And it's because I am committed to over-delivering in any way possible. So that's the big trick that I would propose to everyone. As far as my unique selling proposition, I have maybe three things that I do. The number one thing I'm known for is something we talked about earlier, is interactive processes. I do a lot of things that get the audience in the conversation, whether it's a small group, large group. My favorite thing is a big group where I get right out in the middle of them. Doesn't happen very often. So I'm known for engaging people. I'm known for challenging them. Mm-hmm. I really do not stay in conventional space. There's a lot of people who cover that. They cover it well. That's not my space. I will really push people to go someplace else. And then the other thing is I'm known as, I've been labeled a translator, that I can take difficult subjects, things that challenge people, and I can find ways to frame it so that they can learn in ways they wouldn't have otherwise learned. And I really take a lot of pride in trying to figure out how to get a complex idea into people's hearts.
Do you have a godfather or a guiding spirit?
Well, a couple things. One, I have a mentor I affectionately refer to as Master Sam Wise. He's in Texas, and he has been working with me for 27 years. So I do have a longtime mentor who knows me extraordinarily well. He does something that you and I had chatted about even before the interview, is he will tell me what I need to hear. He won't hold back, which has been incredibly valuable. Probably the thing that I use Toastmasters for more than anything else is it's a laboratory for me. It's a chance. I don't ever just do the same thing again because I know how to do that. I'm always pushing myself to try something new, use the space differently. So what that creates is my own little learning incubator. And if I take advantage of that, then I can learn whether I have mentors or not. And I don't use Toastmasters or most speaking spaces now as the place that will teach me. I use what I'm doing as the teaching mechanism. And then, like every good professional, I steal material and ideas and support from anybody and everybody who's willing to give it.
Can you list out the biggest benefits that one can get by attending that? The reason is a lot of people would join and then drop off without really realizing the benefit.
I think they believe they're motivated, But I mean, people are busy, and so they don't realize that it's going to take some effort, and then at a later date, they drop by the wayside. It's not that there's not a learning opportunity. And the only advice I would give that I think changes it all is throw yourself in with abandon. Who knows what you can learn if you really push yourself to
You have
learn?
nothing to lose.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Coming to national leaders, international personalities, national personalities, do they take up any such course? Do they really attend any such course, or any such do they go to any school or college and learn? Because most of the national leaders are great speakers, as you see.
Yes. Well,
Martin
they've got to
Luther-
communicate, so yes.
Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, or John F. Kennedy, Abraham Lincoln. They inspired the world. Even Barack Obama recently. I think part of his success was because he speaks so well. My question is, do they become great speakers after they become great personalities, or the other way around?
Well, I think we have to be honest and admit that some of us have a natural bent in that direction. You're natural oratorical, good with language, more comfortable in front of a group. So you can't discount when people have just got that aptitude. At the same time, it's the rare person who has not had some developmental work. It is very rare for someone to know how to do this without having been coached and developed. Almost all the people you mentioned have had a fair amount of developmental effort that got them where they did. And the benefit, since most of us don't think of ourselves as a great orator, is you don't have to be a great orator. If you can learn and practice enough, exactly what you said, I mean, you'll get your own really capable style, if not exceptional, simply by the act of speaking often. So we shouldn't let this idea that people are perfect at this keep us from getting our own degree of style developed.
How far the element of humor helps your speech?
Well, what we know about humor is it does bring people in. It's very engaging. It tends to be warm, unless, of course, you get really edgy, but even that can work. So we know that humor is a tool. We know that people are more inclined to open their ears and hear if they've been laughing. I don't know your background, but laughter meditations have been shown to do remarkable things in our psyche. And so laughter is very, very helpful. So we can use humor oftentimes to say or do things or set up things that we can't do otherwise. At the same time, if we're really honest, the ancient Greeks, tragedy and comedy both coexist. So the most powerful work is where we're able to do both. We use humor to complement drama to complement humor, and we go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Tends to be extraordinarily potent if we can learn how to do that effectively.
Another thing is the body language. They always talk about your gestures,
Yes.
the body movement, your eye contact, the way you dress up and everything matters. So can you give some tips as to what is the best way to look and act?
Certainly. A couple things. And the first is not going to surprise anybody. We know that first impressions make a difference.
Correct.
How we appear, how we're groomed, the color choices, all those things make a difference. But we should not assume that means you've got to show up for everything in a tuxedo. You have to be appropriate to setting, and accessibility is really, really important. So appearance, all the things we do that allow people to look upon us in a favorable light is very helpful. We know that eye contact is essential. The better you make eye contact, the more humanizing it is. We know that if you're just static with a flat-line voice that just goes on, or if you don't move, or if you don't use big gestures, we're not able to do that in this particular setting, but we know that those things provide accent, they provide punctuation, contrast. And so anything we can do to provide some variety makes it easier for us to be listened to. So too with our content and how we deliver it, including sometimes doing things that put people a little off balance because they may be able to learn as a result of that. And most of this is craft work. You develop it by experimenting with it and see what works for you. But all of those are very helpful.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Ron. Now I'm going to put you on a spot.
Okay, fire away.
Absolutely.
Hope I got a good answer.
Sure. Okay. You're going to stand up now And I and our videographer John, we both are going to be your audience.
Okay.
Imagine us as about 1,000 people sitting in front of you.
Okay.
And here is the topic.
Okay.
Okay. The challenge of raising teens. Okay, that's the topic.
That's applicable to everyone.
Yeah. So you have 5 seconds to prepare and about 20 seconds to speak.
20 seconds to speak, okay. I'm assuming that if you're listening, you remember being a teenager, because if you don't remember that, you probably aren't here. Simple tip, every kid knows when you're gaming them, when your parent is playing games, telling you things that aren't really going to hold up. So the number one tip for a teenager, tell them the truth. Tell them the awful, honest, self-revealing, painful, your own story. Reveal yourself, because your kids will respond beautifully to your authenticity, and they'll know that they're not alone in some ways they won't get as long as you think you're playing the parent. And the good news is, you have that experience because you really were a teenager once. That is a tip that'll change your kids' lives.
Wow. What do you think, folks? What do you think about Ron? I think it was very good. That's all, folks. All that you need is look at the topic, get your thoughts together, get up, speak yourself, be natural, and do a little bit of gestures and add humor. That's more important than anything else. Don't worry about the results, and don't worry what your audience are thinking about you. You do yourself, you be yourself, and do well. And thank you for being with us. We will come back with more and more interviews shortly.